Hi, I'm China Young. I am the co-managing director with Winding Road Theater Ensemble, and I am excited to be here today with Jackie Rosenfeld, the playwright for our upcoming reading, Keeping Abreast. Hello, Jackie.
Hi.
Hi. I just want to, let's just get to know you a little bit. How long have you been writing? How long have you been identifying as a playwright?
Oh, which are two different answers. Yeah, I've been writing as long as I remember. I remember even in elementary school, writing little short stories and that kind of thing, and always knew that I wanted to be a writer. And then when I was in junior high, I got involved in the theater program because I'd been playing the cello since fourth grade, and apparently I wasn't very good. And in seventh grade, they were like, how about if we find something new? And there's seats left in the drama class. So I started taking theater at that point, and it never occurred to me that I could put writing and theater together into one thing until I was in undergrad. And I was writing, I was working, I was the editor for our literary magazine when I was in high school, and I worked on the literary magazine in college. But it took a theater professor telling me that I was a good writer and should look at playwriting the same year that I had a creative writing professor tell me that my dialogue was the strongest part of my writing, that I finally sort of put together, because I kind of thought only dead people wrote plays, and probably particularly dead white men,
Yep.
And so it didn't seem like something that I would be allowed to do or that I could do until I got permission, I think. And once that happened, I haven't turned back. So, oh man, so this is going on 30 years now. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's so interesting to think about that there's, we are presented with what is the idea of writing. These are authors, these are playwrights, and they all fit into this very specific box, what we learn in academia, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of discourages you if you don't identify as that kind of person, then it kind of discourages you to actually think that you could do it.
Yeah, and as difficult as it still is, this was, back in the early 90s, late 80s and early 90s. And so it was even more, those narrow categories of who was sort of allowed to participate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When was your first play produced?
My first play was produced, it was a play called The Posthumous Life of Sylvia Plath et al. And it was produced at Angela State University in 2001.
Awesome. Fun fact for our viewers, I saw that play. I went to high school in San Angelo, Texas, and several of my friends were in that production. So I got to see it. And then Jackie and I met again later when I went to undergrad for my undergrad at Texas Tech, and Jackie was getting her master's in playwriting. So our paths just keep crossing. It's so awesome.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah. So what inspired you to write Keeping Abreast? What was the impetus for that?
It's a more personal story. And then whenever I lead with that, people suspect that I have had breast cancer, or that it was suspected, and it's not really the case at all. I started writing the play in 2004, in the fall of 2004, when I had lost my father to cancer in January of that year. And dealing with breast cancer felt like a safe way to keep processing cancer, and it's sort of to give myself a venue for fighting it. My father had had cancer for a couple of years, but it didn't get really bad until October of 2003, and then he died in December or early January of 2004. So I really only felt like I had like these 2 months of processing and contending with it, and I wasn't done. And so I started researching cancer just as a thing that I did, I think, to help the grieving process. And at the time, I knew that I was going to be taking a playwriting class that fall with Dr. Burt, and that we had to go in with a scenario already written, a play that we were prepared to get going and write. And I had been at the doctor's office and sort of mulling over ideas while I sat in the waiting room, and I picked up a magazine, and there was an article about a woman who had had breast cancer. And in one of the pictures in the article was of a mastectomy site with the tattoo of a bow and arrow where the nipple was. And it was like, in that moment, I was like, this is a story I have to tell. And it's, the story I do tell is very different from the woman in the article, but the woman in the article is, for those of you who see, is much more of a Kali character than our lead of Mina. But that was the impetus, that was the germinal image for me for that play. And then being able to tie it back and process things for myself too.
That's really awesome. Thank you for sharing that. That is a very personal story. So thank you for being willing to share that. And I don't think I knew that. I didn't know that in inspiration that Kali, so Kali is a character in the show, for those of you that do attend our live reading or choose to view it online. And she has that tattoo. They describe how she has that tattoo, and she's this powerful performance artist that talks about her journey with breast cancer. And so that's really cool to learn that initial image found its way into your final product. So just how life inspires art, life inspires art, and that beautiful circular nature.
I like to think this is sort of one of my own personal mantras. You know, the discussion of, does art imitate life or does life imitate art? And I just have like this idea in my mind that art is two mirrors facing each other, and life is what happens in between. And then, like you said, it is that cycle.
I love that. And then you have that continuing mirror image, you know, that we used to play with if we had two mirrors together, and it just like, it's almost like Inception, and it just keeps going on and on and on. Yeah, I love that. So what could you tell us a little bit about the production history of Keeping Abreast? You know, as I've mentioned already, we have had our paths cross several times in our lives. So I actually saw, I believe, the first production of this when it was produced at Texas Tech University. And I know it's had a few others. So yeah, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about the production history.
So yeah, the first production was in the fall of 2005 at Texas Tech University, and it was for my thesis project, and as well as the director, Sarah Shaver's director's thesis project as well. Then it got picked up by a theater company in New York City the next fall in 2006, and it was done by the Ratutu Collaborative. And in that production, it was my first show in New York, and it was also Amy Schumer's first show in New York. And she played the character of Mina when at the time we were both nobodies. And I remember going to Hooters with her after the show and having just this long conversation. And so that was kind of, you know, a very interesting experience, especially to watch the trajectory of her career after that.
Yeah, that's great. Now I get to say, everyone, I'm sharing a role with Amy Schumer. Love that.
Yeah, right. And then I think, so that was in 2006. And then the next production was actually in Colorado Springs with the Springs Ensemble Theater. And Sarah Shaver, I keep trying to say Sarah Shepard Shaver, that's her full name, was a company member of the theater and submitted the play for production. And she didn't direct it, but she ended up starring in it, and she played Mina in that production. So she went from director to actor in the performance. And then in 2012, a theater company, the Manhattan Theater Mission, picked it up for a production in early 2012 was when it was going up. And they had a production scheduled, and they got to dress rehearsal night, and the theater that they were in flooded on the final dress. And so the show ended up having to close. So that was an almost production, but then the same theater company ended up submitting the production to the New York International Fringe Festival for the summer of 2012, and it got picked up and ran at the Cherry Lane Theater in their studio theater, which is just like I've had to play at the Cherry Lane Theater. It's like one of my dreams, and it happened. It was very, very exciting. And then the young woman who played Mina in that production, her name is Cameron Hebb, she applied for a grant from the Queens Art Council in the borough of Queens and received it and did a production of it at the Secret Theater the next fall in 2013. And since then, I think it's had one more production in 2014 at Angelo State University, where I did my undergrad, directed by Dr. Bill Dahl, who also did my very first production. And it was wonderful. And so then in time is hard. Isn't it 2017, I believe, it was recorded as an audiobook through Blender Woman Productions in Michigan. And they flew me out and I got to sit in the studio and be part of that recording. And it's something available on audible.com now. And then it just so happened this year, you guys at Winding Road approached me about the production, and it is now also going to be done as in Texas, we have an entity known as UIL one-act play, and they asked if I would write a one-act version of the play or edit a one-act version for production in that. So that'll be happening in the spring. So it's had a little resurgence this year, which is really fun.
Do you mind if I ask what school is going to be doing that?
Yeah, I believe it's. I'm not sure exactly. I know it is the high school in Winona, Texas. I don't know if it is. I think it is Winona High School.
Awesome. Yeah, I remember high school, Texas high school, UIL one-act competition. I remember very well.
Yeah, it's the largest. It's the largest theater festival in the world.
Wow, I did not know that. So that's really cool to know. Awesome. Well, that's awesome. We are very thrilled and privileged to be in the mix of producers of Keeping Abreast. So thank you again.
I'm very excited about it too.
Yeah, thank you. So what about now? Do you have anything you're working on now?
I do. I try to generally have at least one play that I'm working on, and right now I have 2 to 3, sort of like I start get something off the ground and going, and then ideas already start formulating for something else. But I find that having more than one project to work at a time gets me writing more often. And if I'm stuck with one, I can turn to the other. And one of them is based on a song that is just one of the most haunting, for me personally, stories that I've ever heard. And it's a song called Rodeo Rose by Fred Eaglesmith. And I was able to contact Mr. Eaglesmith and get permission to do a theatrical adaptation of it. And then I'm working on a play that is, the concept of the play is really new to me, the idea of doing an autoethnography, which is kind of as a play, which is sort of along the lines of doing a memoir as a play, with the idea that I would then also be the performer. And so just sort of personal stories and dealing with sexual abuse and post-traumatic stress disorder. And so that's, going back to the personal, but I do think that, theater, if it's not personal, what is it, right? So
absolutely.
So yeah.
Absolutely. I'm not sure if you know, but Winding Road is also producing a play in April, because April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And it is a play called A Shot Away that is about experiences of assault in the military. And it is all told from interviews that were conducted by the playwright Donna Puimano Farley. We're looking forward to being able to share it, but it is, we know it's going to be a powerful piece. So we are connecting with some organizations in town to make sure that we have some advocates, crisis advocates on site when we do that show, because it is such powerful testimony. And it's so brave to turn that light in on ourselves and reveal those pieces of ourselves. And unfortunately, so many of us have experienced that from any gender. So agreed. It's a conversation that unfortunately needs to be had because it's not taken seriously enough.
Agreed, completely.
So when you get that finished, we can do that show in April too, next April. So
Yay, I would be happy to share that with you.
So to wrap up, could you tell us where we can find more information about you and your plays, and where folks might be able to follow you, and where you go from here?
Sure. I have a website that is horribly out of date, but that said, this will be the encouragement I have to get it back up to date. But JackieRosenfeld.com is my website, and that's where you can find definitely contact information for me, as well as some information about my plays. You can find Keeping Abreast on the New Play Exchange, and that's at newplayexchange.org, which is a resource for unpublished plays to be able to find readers, and for theater producers to be able to find unpublished plays. And it's a really great new application that we all have, that we can share our plays without necessarily having to go through the big publishers.
And Winding Road has really been utilizing it, because one of our missions, one of our missions is to produce unpublished works by American playwrights. So we do resource from New Play Exchange all the time. In fact, most of our productions this season we found there.
Oh, wonderful.
Ironically, with the exception of Keeping Abreast, just because it came to mind as we were thinking of our season, and I was like, oh, I loved this script when I saw it at Tech. So hopefully we can do it. And our artistic director just loved it. So
well, now you know it's there. So your whole season's there. That's awesome.
It's true. No, that's really fabulous. So yes, New Play Exchange, absolutely. Anybody looking for new works, it's also a great resource to find works by people and voices that don't get heard enough. So that's the other reason why we go there rather than those major publishers at times also. Well, thank you so much for your time, Jackie. It's been such a joy.
It's a pleasure. I'm so looking forward to getting to see the production myself.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.